Next, on Currents News, a virtual march in a changed Capitol. Some pro-life advocates take to the streets in the shadow of a White House that supports abortion rights. We have team coverage.
Personally opposing abortion, while doing everything within his power to promote and institutionalize abortion not only in the U.S., but around the world.
A top bishop decries an executive order that promotes abortions overseas. And Governor Andrew Cuomo finally answers to fallout after his administration likely undercounted nursing home deaths by 50%. Plus, live stream masses pulled down from Facebook. One small parish's face-off with big tech. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. A new kind of march under a new administration, but the goal remains the same. It has since 1973. That's when abortion was legalized across the United States, and pro-life advocates got to work, vowing to overturn the landmark decision. Due to the pandemic and the recent violence unfolding at the Capitol, the March for Life was virtual this year, but prayers for the unborn were still heard. Currents News' Emily Drooby has the details.
Small but mighty and fueled by prayer.
Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
A limited number of pro-life advocates marching in Washington, D.C. The 48th annual March for Life held virtually this year because of the pandemic and safety reasons stemming from the Capitol riots.
Although separated by physical distance, together we are united in you.
Archbishop Joseph NAUMANN speaking of God. Attendees inspired by stories like Florida politician Representative Kat Cammack. Her mother chose life after doctors urged her to abort, fearing the pregnancy would harm her health.
Her bravery and courage in the face of this difficult decision led to my passion for standing up for the rights of the innocent and the unborn.
Christian Rada, the director of Marriage, Family Formation, and Respect Life Education at the Diocese of Brooklyn, was one of those who joined virtually. He marched for the past 10 years. To him, seeing the large amount of people tuned in virtually was powerful.
I was there in a sense spiritually, like that, with all of these people hearing this message of that we're all pro-life.
A message that's especially important in New York, often called the abortion capital of America. The state sees over 80,000 abortions, over 50,000 in New York City alone. That's according to the Susan B. Anthony list, a nonprofit that seeks to end abortion. Pro-life advocates say spreading the pro-life message nationally is crucial right now as the country has seen a recent change in power.
As they begin the earliest days of their administration, let's tell them that every life matters from the moment of conception.
During the march, lawmaker Representative Chris Smith spoke directly to President Joe Biden.
In your words, that the dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer, are to have any true meaning, the lives of unborn children must be included and their precious lives must be protected.
The message from Representative Smith and other speakers was clear. No matter who is in the White House, the fight for life must remain strong, loud, and passionate. Emily Drooby, Currents News.
This year's March for Life comes on the heels of a devastating setback for the pro-life movement. On Thursday, just hours before the virtual march was set to begin, the Biden administration announced its plans to reverse the Mexico City policy. The policy prevents the use of tax dollars from going to foreign organizations that perform abortions. And according to a new poll, that repeal goes against the wishes of the vast majority of Americans. The Knights of Columbus Marist poll shows most Americans oppose the use of tax dollars to fund abortions. 77% said they oppose using tax dollars to pay for abortions around the world. Only 19% supported public funding of abortions overseas. Also, most favor abortion restrictions. 76% either want abortion banned or limited to the first trimester. Many U.S. bishops are blasting the executive order, calling it grievous. In a statement from the chairman of the U.S. Bishops' Committee on Pro-Life Activities, Archbishop Joseph NAUMANN urged the president to use the office for good, prioritizing the most vulnerable, including unborn children. He also wrote this: As the largest non-government healthcare provider in the world, the Catholic Church stands ready to work with him and his administration to promote global women's health in a manner that furthers integral human development, safeguarding innate human rights and the dignity of every human life beginning in the womb. Archbishop NAUMANN followed up with tough words criticizing the Biden administration in his homily Thursday night during the National Prayer Vigil for Life. The national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, John Lavenberg, was there, and he's on the National Mall right now. He joins us by phone. John, we've talked about Thursday's setback and the march going virtual for the first time. What's going on right now down in D.C. despite all the changes?
Well, there weren't the numbers that there were in the past, for sure. There was, I would say, about a few hundred, 200 to 300, maybe even 400, but that would probably be the top. So there weren't thousands by any means. But that said, people still marched. The March for Life itself had a small group of pro-life leaders that marched and carried the banner, as they do every year. And then as they started to march, people filed in behind them and filled in and marched along with them to the steps. And once you got to the steps, obviously, it's heavily guarded still from the events that happened at the Capitol a few weeks back. And so there is a lot of security. But what people did this year was they placed roses on the sidewalk in front of those steps as a symbol.
You know, now on Thursday night, Archbishop Joseph NAUMANN called reversing the Mexico City policy social imperialism, enforcing American values on third world countries. He said this about President Biden. Let's listen.
Sadly, President Biden is the perfect example of the religiously and ethically incoherent straddle, claiming to believe that human life begins at conception and personally opposing abortion, while doing everything within his power to promote and institutionalize abortion not only in the U.S., but around the world.
So, John, what are the feelings on the Mall today over this? Are there plans to regroup the movement?
So, I mean, the reaction, to be honest, over those comments, there was sadness, there was anger over them. Another thing people mention when it comes to that announcement about the Mexico City policy is the timing of it. Somebody even said to me that they think it was a signal that the president was sending, doing it yesterday right before the March for Life, saying that he obviously knows that the March for Life was today and that it was a signal that he did that on that day. As far as how to handle that from people at the movement, they didn't say there is a specific plan or anything on how to approach it. They just said they're going to continue to pray that the president changes his mind and thinks of abortion and the pro-life movement as a whole differently in the areas that he disagrees.
All right, John, a lot of people criticize the March for Life as being just pro-birth, but that's not actually the aim of the movement. Have you heard any stories of that today?
One woman gave a very powerful speech where she talked about that this just isn't about abortion. This is also about after the baby is born. It's about supporting the mother and supporting the child throughout the life and making sure resources are available. Another woman mentioned to me, she told me that it also goes as far as euthanasia and assisted suicide. And she told a story of her grandmother who was in a nursing home at one point, and that was an option brought up, and that's where part of her passion comes for this.
All right, John, we're looking forward to hearing your stories. Stay warm out there. Again, that was John Lavenberg, the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux.
Thank you so much for having me.
Both Currents News and the Tablet will continue to have full coverage of the March for Life. Be sure to check out currentsny.tv and thetablet.org for the latest reports out of the nation's capital. And back in the Diocese of Immigrants, there will be prayers for the sacredness of life and respect for human dignity. The closing Mass for the U.S. Bishop's 9-day novena will be held at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph. That's coming up following Currents News at 7:30 p.m. live here on Net TV. The Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, is the main celebrant. New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo deflected questions Friday about why his administration withheld the total number of nursing home residents who died of COVID-19, asking, who cares where they died? They died. He called the Attorney General's report a political attack and blamed the previous White House administration.
This report affirms everything the commissioner said for the past year. The State Department of Health followed federal guidance by CMS and CDC. Commissioner said no not-for-profit nursing home was forced to take anyone. Report confirms that. If they took a person who they could not care for, a COVID-positive person, they violated the law. The report says that. And the Department of Health only counted the number of deaths in hospitals and the number of deaths in nursing homes.
Cuomo's administration likely undercounted deaths by 50%. At the same time, the White House is saying the Justice Department will decide if an investigation into Governor Cuomo's role in the COVID-19 nursing home deaths is warranted. Coming up on Currents News, live stream masses marked as spam and pulled down from Facebook. Is it censorship?
There's no other possibility in my mind.
It's happening here in Brooklyn, one small parish's battle against big tech. Plus, a pre-K program in limbo. Parents search for answers after the Department of Education plans to close more than 100 classrooms. And we catch up with one couple who finally got the happy ending they wanted 9 months later. A Brooklyn church has been streaming Mass on Facebook since March, but on January 22nd, they were put in Facebook jail. The tech giant blocked them, calling the Masses spam and in violation of community standards. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the story from Carroll Gardens.
Do you view this as censorship?
But yes, I do really view that as to be censorship because there's no other possibility in my mind.
Jose San Juan has worked in technology for 30 years, and he says he's never seen anything like this.
It's very mind-boggling why we've been cut out.
Sacred Heart St. Stephen's Mass, live streamed daily to hundreds, was ripped off from the web on January 22nd and still remains blocked by Facebook.
We have 2 people watching.
Why? The pastor isn't so sure.
It was, needless to say, a little bit annoying. And my question was, what did we do wrong to get ourselves into this situation?
The live stream began as a simple and seamless solution to the pandemic. DeSales Media, the communication and technology arm of the Diocese of Brooklyn that operates Net TV, came in to install several new cameras that allowed people to hear the word of God in just a click.
Boxcast allowed us, through the sales program, to stream simultaneously through Facebook Live, YouTube, and our website.
But all that effort was gone in an instant when big tech blocked every single one of the parish's accounts from live streaming.
Those who have found this connection with the religion, with God, taken away from them. And they've already had so much taken away from them in the past year.
We reached out to Facebook to ask why this connection has been banned, and were told their investigations team would be looking into it.
We have a family that tunes in from Poland every week.
Monsignor Guy Massey is so proud when he talks about the church's presence online and the team that made it all possible.
They have made this parish look very good and helped the leadership of this parish to still announce the gospel, to still present Mass.
But why would a tech giant target a local church practicing their simple right to religious freedom?
It's very heart-wrenching.
For Jose, until he knows the real reason, he's sticking with censorship.
There's nothing that we feel has stepped over any bounds, and there are no guidelines for that. There are no stipulations for that. So if there are now, please tell us.
Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Currents News is still waiting to hear back from Facebook. In the meantime, Sacred Heart St. Stephen's still can't stream masses. Now to another story of shutdowns. A Brooklyn Catholic school serving 3 neighborhoods is waiting anxiously to find out if its pre-K program will be closed next year. This after the DOE announced they're closing several of them across the city. Currents News' Emily Drooby has the story from Greenpoint.
Good morning.
Laura drops her son off for pre-K, knowing his day will be full of creativity and learning.
Last time you went to the moon, right? You were on a space rocket.
Nourishing kids' minds and their imagination. One reason why Laura loves the pre-K program at St. Stanislaus Kostka Catholic Academy in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And she's not alone.
And it's just one big happy family. The program here is amazing. He's learned so much already.
But now the program is in limbo.
I still don't know what to tell parents, and it's just an awful situation.
Their pre-K3 is private, but since 2016, their pre-K4 has been funded through the city. 105 of those pre-K for all programs have been canceled for the 2021 school year. St. Stanislaus Kostka was originally one of them, but they've appealed. Now they're still waiting to hear if their contract will be cut, and they're running out of time.
And registration usually opens, they haven't announced the window yet, but it usually opens around the first week of February.
School officials are confused because they've been at max capacity for the past 6 years with a 30-person waiting list. They have high scores and great reviews from parents. Last year, they were even asked to expand. The free program is also crucial, serving Greenpoint, Williamsburg, and Long Island City, all areas where rents have skyrocketed.
Parents rely on it. I mean, it saves them a ton of money, and I think it's kind of unfair to pull out the rug from under all these parents during a pandemic where they really can't get into schools. Schools are closed right now.
Whether it's positive or negative, just give us an answer so that we know we can plan and help ease the tension and help ease some of the pressures that our families are experiencing right now, which is important to us.
They've been asking for help, setting up a petition and urging their community to email the DOE, but still nothing. Currents News reached out to the DOE. They say the appeals process is ongoing and that the schools should hear back in the next few weeks. Frank tells us that if this waiting game does end in them losing their contract, they will look into creating a private program, but that it won't be free. A major blow to this community. In Greenpoint, Brooklyn, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
As parents worry about the future of their children's education, one couple is finally getting over the hurdles of adoption during the pandemic. Currents News' Jessica Easthope shares their story from Bedford-Stuyvesant.
Cece, can you slam the gavel for me?
A sound the Gebhardt-Schmidt family's been waiting to hear for years.
High five.
Lindsay and Peter have Evelyn, their biological daughter, Cece, their adopted daughter, and a foster son.
Does it have your name on it?
In November, they finally adopted their daughter, Cece. It was a happy ending, years in the making, but the pandemic proved to be their biggest hurdle.
We spent a number of years trying to adopt her, dedicated to her, particularly, her education, interacting with her biological family. We were only 3 days away from adopting her, and the pandemic happened.
In 2019, 202 adoptions were finalized in Brooklyn. In 2020, that number dropped to 61. The rest were delayed. Lindsay and Peter spent a grueling 9 months wondering if the day would ever come.
To us, she's always been our daughter. Now, legally she is, and everything that comes with that.
This is the photo of Cece falling asleep on my husband's chest.
In the time it took to adopt Cece, Lindsay and Peter had some tough decisions to make, one of them being her name. But like many parts of their adoption journey, they let faith lead the way.
We called her Cece because her initials were CC when she was born. But when I was confirmed, I actually chose St. Cecilia. And so we did make the choice to go ahead and change her actual given name to Cecilia after St. Cecilia.
Lindsay says those 9 months tested her faith more than any other time in her life.
The biggest thing that changed for me was the story about Jesus in the garden. It's definitely changed the way that I see the Bible and what I believe is someone making a huge sacrifice.
Lindsay and Peter say they've learned when you're a foster parent, there's always another hurdle. Right now, that's adopting their foster son.
The longer it takes, the harder it is to sort of answer those questions about why is his situation clearly so different than his sister's.
Oh, you're the best.
It will most likely be years before Lindsay and Peter can adopt him. But now they know if they can make it through this, they can make it through anything. Together. In Bedford-Stuyvesant, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Coming up on Currents News, a silver lining to the coronavirus crisis.
Pandemic really actually gave me the time to sit back, think about my next move, and then make the move.
Finding inspiration in faith, how Catholic artists are keeping their careers afloat throughout the pandemic. And World Youth Day seems a world away, but it's happening, and one of the first steps is now complete. Now to a COVID silver lining. At a time when health and safety concerns are top of mind because of the virus, artists always seem to find a way to keep their creative juices flowing. Currents News' Jessica Easthope spoke with 3 Catholic artists who say the pandemic has been a blessing.
Meet Tony Lipari.
First, I tried to draw them on
Mindy Steffen.
This was my first camera.
And Jake Hart, 3 different artists who have managed to keep hope and their careers alive the past year against all odds.
We've been very productive during this time, but you can't play out.
I was very, very fortunate. It was really like God's timing.
To me, it was a huge blessing.
Each of their industries have taken a major hit, but inside the 4 walls of their New York City apartments, these artists have thought outside the box.
The second verse is kind of addressed to God.
They're all thriving, having found a creative niche.
So this is Airhead.
And stronger connection with God during the pandemic.
This gave us time where you can't play out. We made use of just all this time for writing.
Known professionally as Rickshaw, Tony Lipari formed a band right before New York City went on lockdown. This is the last show the punk rap group performed together. And though the live music industry has plummeted and gigs have felt like a thing of the past, Rickshaw pushed forward.
Because of this, we've actually written about an album's worth of material. Without this, maybe some of that material wouldn't exist, maybe all of it.
It's obviously Joan of Arc.
For cartoonist known as Mindy Indy, keeping her head down and her pencil to paper has worked.
So this is Chronomonium NYC.
In February of 2020, Mindy took on 2 big projects, a sci-fi comic of her own and a series of children's books about the saints.
We can really, learn a lot from the saints and draw strength from them. This is him seeing the future.
The pandemic allowed her to reconnect with her faith and focus on her talents without the rush.
I do feel more connection in the quietness and the slowing down.
Each roll of film probably has it's about 2 minutes.
Like Tony and Mindy, Jake Hart also sees this crisis through a different lens.
The pandemic really actually gave me the time to sit back, think about my next move, and then make the move. You can already see the kind of like grain.
As a Catholic filmmaker, Jake's art is focused on a mystical view of faith. His most recent film was shot entirely during the pandemic with his collection of vintage cameras. The footage is grainy, but now he says the vision for his career is clear.
Putting the films together in a collection, putting together a website, and putting together a story and why I was doing this and why I wanted to share these films.
He was all into languages and like Latin.
These artists couldn't be more different.
Confronting loss.
But what they have in common is trusting God's plan. Though they're not thankful for the pandemic, they've been able to focus on the good, the time it's given them to create.
She's very inspiring.
Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Be sure to stay right here on Net TV. The closing mass of the 9-day novena for life with Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is about to begin. We also want to leave you on a joyful note, listening to the theme song for the next World Youth Day taking place in Lisbon, Portugal in 2023. Take it away.